Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to another episode of Food for Thought. I'm your host Mubashir Ahmed. In this program, we bring you a lot of information from many different walks of life, many different areas that affect our day-to-day life. In one of our previous programs, we spoke about waste management. We showed you and talked about all the areas that are covered by the waste management. We had Gary Spotowski from City of Edmonton's education program who walked us through the whole process, how the garbage is collected, how the garbage is dealt with, how it is sorted, and what happens with it. And he also talked about what effects it has on us and on our environment. Then we visited the Waste Management Center to experience the whole thing firsthand. And we watched all that process. We watched all that garbage going through that process. And we also saw the end product. That visit, of course, brought up a few more questions. So we thought that it might be better to bring someone else also in our studios and talk about these waste management processes in further details. So we invited Alison Winkler, who is a public education specialist with City of Edmonton, who will be giving us some more information about the waste management. But before we go and talk to Alison, I would just like to remind you that Edmonton's waste management program is one of the most advanced programs in North America and one of the best in the world. So Alison, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So before we go into the details of waste management, I would like to ask you about yourself. Like, what do you do at the Waste Management Center? I see that you are a public educational specialist. So do you have a classroom there you teach to the kids, or what does that education mean, and why is it important? And how long have you been there?
I've been there for almost 2 years, and so basically what I do and what my colleagues do is we do outreach into the community. So we go into classrooms and into different community settings, and we teach as many people as we can about what waste management is all about in the City of Edmonton, what you can and can't recycle, how to do everything properly. We also lead tours of our Edmonton Waste Management Center. So we have many people coming into our center, and we lead them on tours around our site so they can see firsthand what's happening.
That's great. So how long have you been working there?
I've been there for almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So we already talked about waste management and stuff, but there may be a few people who have not watched our previous programs. So just for the benefit of all, would you describe briefly what waste management is? And
Sure.
why it is important for us? I mean, that's one of the main points, like why it is important for us.
Absolutely. So waste management is important because if you think about it, everything around us will be waste in the future of some sort. So we need a system to deal with different types of waste. So what waste management is it's just offering a whole range of options and how to deal with different types of waste items, whether or not we can reuse or recycle some of those materials and whether or not some of that material ends up in a landfill.
Okay. I assume the waste management has been done always. I mean, garbage was always produced, garbage was always collected.
Exactly.
Sometimes it was thrown in the streets. Then slowly we evolved, and then people started putting it at a certain place, I guess. And then when did Edmonton start providing the service of waste management, and how did it evolve into the state that we have today?
Sure. So organized garbage collection really started in Edmonton in the 1900s. So garbage was picked up originally by horse and carriage.
Okay.
And so we've been collecting garbage in Edmonton for a long time.
Over 100 years now.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
long time, yeah.
Exactly. And it's definitely evolved from there. So I would say the major push for a big change in what we see today came in the 1980s. So typically in the past, we were less concerned about the environment than we are today. And so we had a landfill, the Clover Bar landfill, and most things were garbage back then, so everything was ending up in that landfill, and that landfill was filling up really quickly. And so what happened was we started running out of space, and the city started looking around the City of Edmonton, trying to find a new place for a landfill. Not surprisingly, we ran into NIMBY, not in my backyard. So you run into this problem. Nobody wants to live next door to a landfill. Fair enough. So it was really a push from the residents of Edmonton that said to the city, you need to start looking at garbage in a different way. Is there something that we can do with this garbage that we don't have to put all of it in a landfill? So we started one of the first major recycling programs in Canada in the 1980s. and we started collecting recyclables back then in a blue bin system.
So we are serving the whole city of Edmonton. So
Mhm.
what would you say approximately how much waste are we collecting from city of Edmonton?
Sure. That number varies a lot seasonally. We get a lot more, I guess, organic waste happening in the spring and the summer. But
Mhm.
on average, we're processing about 400,000 tons of garbage a year.
400,000 tons of garbage a
Yeah.
year. So,
Yeah.
so it's pretty much like close to 10 to 12 tons of garbage. No, actually, it will be a lot more than that. That is arriving on an hourly basis.
Yeah, so we
Close to.
can process about 100 tons of garbage an hour. So on average a day, about 1,000 tons, give or
Oh.
take.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of garbage.
It's a lot of material. Yeah, for sure.
So, it's not that the people are coming to a center and throw the garbage over there. They may be doing in some instances, of course, I guess you guys provide that service as well. But it's mostly city of Edmonton is going out and collecting garbage and bringing it to the center. And then, of course, some contractors are also working in
Yeah.
that particular field. So I guess we use a lot of trucks to collect that garbage. What would you say, how many trucks are working on a daily basis to collect this garbage from the city streets?
Sure. So again, it is a bit hard to say just based on we're collecting from single family households and from building complexes, and we also have contractors that we use, but well over 300 people and 300 trucks are on the streets every day just in the business of picking up garbage and bringing it to our center.
And that is just picking up the garbage. So of
Yeah.
course, once the garbage is picked up, it's brought to the center, it gets dumped over there. When we visited the center, we saw lines of people who were actually
Yeah.
sorting this garbage and from the very beginning where they sorted it and then they resorted it and then they resorted it. And then it went into so many different lines.
Yeah.
So what would you say, how many people are actually working in all of that line of processing?
Yeah, so at the Edmonton Waste Management Center, there's over 400 people that work there. So that's everybody that's working from a sorting line to somebody like myself who's leading tours to somebody who's doing research trying to figure out a new way to handle waste. So yeah, that's a lot of people that are thinking about waste and garbage every day.
So we are talking about 700 or so people collecting the garbage, sorting
Yeah.
the garbage and taking care of it. Then we are talking about 300 trucks that are working on a daily
Yeah,
basis.
at least.
How many households are we serving? So Edmonton has approximately 800,000 people. So what would you say, how many households actually are we serving? I'm not sure if we serve commercial customers as well.
We do. So households, we serve about 340,000 households, and that's again single-family households or building complexes, multifamily building complexes. And commercially, we serve over 700 commercial customers as well.
Yeah, so that's approximately 2 to 3 people per household. So that covers the city of Edmonton. Now, when we are serving the commercial customers, do we provide them a different kind of service than the household service? Do they produce some different kind of waste, or do they get the same service as the households?
Yeah, basically what happened, the whole reason that the city decided to offer commercial services is because a lot of the waste that's generated in a city comes from the commercial sector. So we had these amazing capabilities and amazing facilities to deal with residential waste, so we thought, well, why not start offering that commercially? And the idea was that hopefully with the city offering those services, very convenient services for recycling and being able to divert material from the landfill, then hopefully some other organizations would then follow suit and offer more waste diversion from a landfill. So basically the reasons that, that a business would hire the city to pick up their waste is the amount of waste that can be diverted. So about 45% of the waste picked up commercially can be diverted from a landfill.
Wow, that's a lot of waste.
Significant,
Again.
yeah, absolutely. So it's a really, just doing that is a really simple way for a company or a business to decrease the impact of their waste on the environment.
Yeah, because when we went to the center, we went into the dumping area, we saw that it kind of had two sections where household waste was being dumped on one side and it was being treated a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
And then on the commercial side, there was a front-end loader that was pushing it into a kind of hole to fill up the trucks and stuff.
Yeah.
So all of that was basically going straight into the landfill?
Yeah, that commercial waste, yeah, unless they have that special service where they've hired the city to go through the special treatment, we call it, and pull all that material out that can either be recycled or turned to compost.
Give us an example of a business that wants itself to be dealt with like a household customer, or who wants to contribute in a sense where they do not want their waste to be going into the landfill. They would like it to be recycled.
Sure. So in the city of Edmonton, we have sort of many commercial organizations. One organization that just signed on with us was West Edmonton Mall. So across the mall, they produce a lot of waste, and so for them, it was really important that they could show that they were diverting material from the landfill.
So there were hundreds of shops in the mall. So I guess they produce a lot of cardboard boxing,
cardboard
stuff
boxes,
like that.
lots of paper, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to the center, you guys can separate all that and then reuse it or send it to.
Yeah, reuse or recycle. Yeah, and so basically what happens is that material is kept out of a landfill either by turning the organics into compost or by recycling any of the materials that we can recycle. And one of the big benefits about using that system is that the same rules apply for recycling and garbage collection at home as they do for at work. So it's a very simple, convenient system for businesses to use.
That's great. You just talked about compost, and I see a bag sitting there for compost, and I know while talking to Gary and while visiting the center, I mean, this compost is actually a very good quality fertilizer for not only for our home use, but also for the commercial use as well, because you guys were producing two different kind of compost. Of course, we saw, but just for the benefit of the viewers, would you describe this whole process of composting briefly, just to give the appreciation of how much effort goes into it and how difficult this process is? And then, of course, we'll ask you, how much material we are saving from going into the landfill by composting it.
So the basic process for composting is that all of our organic material that you and I put into our garbage cans at home, when it comes out to our center, it goes through a sorting process. So we're using people and we're using machines to help us sort that material out. Once we've separated the organics from the non-organics, that material goes into the Edmonton composting facility. Okay. So a few different types of...
That is another facility within the waste management
exactly.
center.
Yeah, exactly, right next door. So basically in there we're mixing that municipal waste together with biosolids, and biosolids come from the Gold Bar Wastewater Treatment Center, so that's wastewater sewage that we're adding together. That can sit inside those aeration halls for around a month to 6 weeks, turning into compost, heating up. The other type of compost that we make is completely outdoors. So that compost is basically just biosolids and wood chips, and it's called gore composting. It's a slightly different type of composting.
And that's mostly used in the commercial areas, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So it seems to be quite a difficult process. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to produce. So how much waste are we saving from going into the landfill by running it through this composting facility?
It's pretty staggering. So 50,000 tons of compost is what we produce a year. So that's
50,000 tons.
Yeah, that's a lot of material that in the past would have been just sitting in a landfill, occupying all of that space. And now we've, come up with a pretty simple solution on ways that we can use it.
So it's approximately about 15% or so, or 10 to 15% of the total waste that is collected in the city of Edmonton, which we actually produce compost out.
Yeah, and I would say even on a household basis, it's more like 40%. About 40% of the waste that you and I would throw away every day is organic.
And it gets reused.
And it gets reused, absolutely.
So looking at this, we see that about 40% is being reused in this particular farm. Then we are taking out a lot of cardboards and stuff, which are being recycled again by another third-party company.
Yeah.
Then we have another facility that you showed us where they are going to be reusing the paper. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So Gray's paper is relatively new out on our site. And they're doing a very remarkable type of paper recycling. So they're one of the first companies in Canada that's offering 100% post-consumer recycled paper. So they're not adding any new material to make paper. They're taking old office paper that's been recycled and they're mixing it together with fabrics in a process that uses no chemicals and way less water than traditional paper making does. And then they're turning around and they're selling it back to the city and back to different companies.
So we made compost. We took the cardboards out. We took the papers out. And Gary was talking about a new process that you have already started or are about to start. That my shirt is going to go in there too.
Yeah.
What are you going to make out of that?
Yeah.
That was a new building that was being built that we saw in the center. The biofuels.
Facility.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now what's happening in the city is that we're able to, with the programs that are already in place, we're able to divert about 60% of our household waste from the landfill. We want to do even better. So we're looking to build this waste to biofuels facility, and it's already under construction. And once that's complete, we'll be able to divert an additional 30% of our waste. So almost everything else we're going to be able to turn, if we can't compost it and we can't recycle it, we're going to be able to turn it into biofuels, so things like methanol and ethanol.
And even then, if something remains today, which is about 45% that remains that goes into the landfill, I guess?
Yeah, right now about 40% of the material is still going into a landfill.
Is that the waste of the waste, or we have another use of that waste as well? I mean, when we were walking by, you were pointing to a power generation plant that was actually had something to do with the landfill.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of the detail about that power generation and how does that work, number one, and how many households we can lighten up with
Sure.
with the power of the waste.
Yeah. So basically what happens inside a landfill when we have all of this waste just sitting there, we get a landfill gas building up inside the landfill. It's methane, and so methane is bad for a few reasons. It's flammable, so we don't want that coming to the surface of the landfill. And it's also a really bad greenhouse gas, so we don't want that going up into our atmosphere and polluting our atmosphere. So we basically have tubes inserted into the landfill where we can siphon out that landfill gas, and it's right on site. We generate it right on site and we turn it into electricity. And so we can basically, it's the equivalent to powering 46,000 homes in Edmonton every year. That's how much electricity we generate.
46,000 homes.
Yeah, so a lot of
so
electricity.
So that's basically kind of cheap or pretty much free electricity that we are getting out of that, which would otherwise be wasted.
It's turning a negative consequence of landfilling into a positive just by being able to do something with that in the past, what was considered a waste.
So we are not even burning any fuel to produce that. So we are further reducing the greenhouse gases by actually using a greenhouse gas.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting and an amazing procedure. And I think that's one of the biggest helps to the environment that we can produce.
Absolutely.
So obviously, at our homes we do have a lot of material that is considered a little bit of dangerous. That would include, the leftover paint from my deck. That would include the batteries from my kids' toys. That would include I don't know, nail polish remover from my wife or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So all of that material, it's a little bit difficult for me to drive all the way up to the waste management center and drop those 2 boxes there or whatever. I could be lazy. I could be, I do not know how much effort and how much money and how much work goes behind managing all this waste. So what are the options that I can have in order to safely dispose of these materials?
Sure. So basically the City of Edmonton has set up eco-stations, and that's a place for residents to bring special types of waste. So you're absolutely right. Not everything can be recycled, and we don't want everything else put into the garbage. So there are things, household hazardous waste, electronics, things like that we want taken to an eco-station. So basically from the eco-station, those materials are divided up depending on what they are. They can recycle some of that material, they can bring some of that material out to the waste management center and we can deal with it there, where like our electronics, we can break our electronics down there and recycle most of that material. But it's just a way for, a convenient way for residents to have access to being able to dispose of special types of waste items.
But fine, we do all that, and you guys do a lot of separation. Even though some people might have thrown the stuff into the garbage, and it lands in your facility, and you separate it out. Still, a lot of it might be going into the landfill. What precautions are taken to make sure that it does not cause any environmental damage?
So the bottom of a landfill, before even one piece of garbage goes into a landfill, you have to have a liner. So in the City of Edmonton's case, the liner along the bottom of the landfill is made out of clay. Sometimes it's made of plastic, but ours is made out of clay. And basically what happens is when it rains and it snows on top of our landfill and you get that water sinking down through all those layers of garbage, especially when we're talking 30 years ago when a lot more things were garbage than they are today. Yep. We get that leachate, which is that sort of toxic soup down at the bottom of a landfill, and we don't want that sinking down into our groundwater and getting into our river. So we have that liner to keep those things in place. A few of the other things that happen around a landfill is a lot of groundwater monitoring and soil testing. So we actually divert our groundwater down and around our landfill, so it's not even coming into contact with our landfill.
That's great. That's great. I mean, again, it's a huge plant. There's a lot of heavy machinery in there. There are a lot of people working. A lot of dangerous stuff is coming in. So safety is a prime concern. I mean, in our society, safety is a prime concern anyways. Especially in that kind of working environment, you guys have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders towards your employees and stuff. So what action do you guys take to keep your employees safe and to mitigate those risks that they encounter on a day-to-day basis?
We have, like many companies, or most companies today, I would say, we have occupational health and safety standards which we have to follow. So it's everything from providing the equipment to protect workers to providing training so that they know what to look for in their jobs to prevent accidents or incidents from happening. And it goes all the way up the line to having educators go into the community and educate the public about what they should and shouldn't be putting where, just to protect our workers that are out there collecting and sorting this waste.
Even with all of these steps, it's a pretty tough environment to work in. And when I was standing there, I know if I went to work there, at least in the beginning, I probably would not last more than a few hours. So I mean, it's not just the hard task. It's a lot of smell. It's a lot of dangerous things coming in, and it's a lot of focus that you need because the belts were moving really fast, and I could actually move my head like this. So how do what people must be willing to run away from there. So what special do you guys do to retain those people? Do you provide them special trainings and stuff, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So even just starting with the gear, I mean, the gear could be something as simple as a pair of steel-toed boots, or it could be all the way up to, you're wearing coveralls, a hard hat, face protection, a respirator, depending where you are, arm guards, gloves. So a lot of safety gear depending where you are in our facility and what type of work you're doing. And a lot of training in terms of what to look for, what to watch out for. Obviously we don't ever put our workers in danger. So if they come across something that's not safe for them, they can pull a cord on the conveyor belt, the whole thing stops, and the situation can be dealt with further. Absolutely.
So when we're talking about these workers and stuff, so I think it's about time that I asked you. I mean, there are a lot of career paths in waste management. In itself, it's a science. But again, there are a lot of other labor jobs as well in there. So if somebody wants to join your team, what kind of education or what kind of background do they need to have?
There is a whole range of backgrounds that you could have. Just like the Edmonton Waste Management Center hires a whole range of different types of people and positions. So, we have people working in our research building conducting research. We have people working on the sorting line, sorting out different materials. So, you know, you need to be willing to lift heavy material then and deal with kind of smelly conditions. You know, there's people like myself who go out into the community and educate. You know, there's people who are driving heavy equipment around. So a whole range of different backgrounds and different education levels. So I would say it depends on what you're interested in.
Absolutely.
You know, and if you're interested in sort of a labor position and just being on your feet and being active all day, or if maybe you want to more sit in a desk situation and do
So there is
some
all
research.
kinds of jobs available that people can take part in to help their community.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about community. I mean, what roles and responsibilities citizens have to play? I mean, of course, you know, all of this thing is being done to help the community, to keep our cities safe, to keep our streets clean, and to keep our water supply clean. So what roles you think citizens have to play in order to keep all of this process running safely?
I would say the most important thing that a resident can do is to find out, I mean, Edmonton has some amazing facilities available for dealing with waste, but if you don't live in Edmonton, then find out what your community offers in terms of waste management options. And think further down the line. I think what happens today is that, you know, our garbage and recycling collectors are so effective at their job that we put our garbage out and it disappears a couple hours later, and we don't get the chance to think about what happens with that material further down the line and how many people are going to come into contact with that material. So I think it's, you know, spending a few minutes educating yourself in what's happening in your community and what the process is, and if there are things that you can do specifically to help the people out down the line.
You just talked about, you know, you put the garbage out and it disappears a few minutes later or a couple hours later. Of course, people are picking it up. So what people at home need to do to keep these people safe who are picking up the garbage?
A few different things. So one of the things, if you're living in a house and you're setting your garbage out in just garbage bags or garbage cans, if you have sharp objects, make sure you put them into a box and you label it sharp objects. So it's going to end up in the same place. It just means that your garbage collector knows when they're picking that up, what they're handling. So they're not just going to grab a bag of garbage and potentially injure themselves.
Right.
Make sure your garbage cans aren't too heavy. You know, I mean, you
don't want them to break their back.
Exactly. They're going to 700 to 1,000 homes a day. So that's a lot of bending and twisting and lifting. So if we can make sure that we do these simple things like making sure our garbage isn't too heavy. I would say if you're living in a building complex, it is a truck that just comes in and picks up that bin, but we need to make sure that there's not a lot of material. I mean, sometimes we see a lot of furniture piled up in front of a garbage bin. So I would say in that kind of scenario, then if you are coming out and your garbage bins are full and there's no more room, place a call to your building manager and ask them to have an additional pickup day set up so that you don't have all this waste sitting out there.
All right, thank you very much, Alison. So as you heard from Alison, that a lot of effort that goes behind managing this waste. After listening to this conversation and hopefully after watching the documentary about the waste management and listening to Gary in the previous program, you have come to truly appreciate that how much complexity is there behind this process. But as a result, you get a clean city, you get a neat city, because there have been incidents in the past and in the near past as well, where not only the ordinary diseases but even up to plague has been started in many places, just because people have been dumping the stuff in the streets and place was dirty, and that invited the mice and the rats and stuff like that. So appreciating that cleanliness and keeping it clean is very important. So hopefully you learned a lot with this program, and hopefully you will act upon this and make your life easy, as well as the people who are actually working behind the scenes. Take care of yourself. See you in another program, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.